On this episode, we talk about the agronomics of different stresses on crops and how to keep your crop healthy and profitable.
Hi, this is Joe Merschman. Welcome to Cup of Joe, episode number 38. Today we have Turk and Ben, and Tommy's not with us today. A lot of things going on right now, Ben, and what's on farmers' minds right now with that crop?
We had a pretty big wind event come through yesterday afternoon, 50, 60 mile an hour winds, and it looked like it stretched from the top quarter of Missouri all the way through past Cedar Rapids. There's lots of corn in varying degrees on where it's at and what stage it's in. And from what I've seen, a lot of the corn that's already hit pollination or going through a tasseling of some sort, what has hit the R stage looks to be that it's still standing, and that's because the corn plant
fared pretty well, didn't it?
Yep, it fared it very well.
Well, and then, the Stein hybrids, the shorter style hybrids, that wind didn't bother them at all, obviously.
Correct, and I have seen some of the stuff, but some of the varieties that are going through rapid cell division and elongation that haven't hit it's the June planted corn. Some of that stuff doesn't look near as good. It's leaning, but I imagine it will J-hook and it'll come right back up. I mean, with the season that we're in. The good news is that it didn't green snap.
Yep.
So we did have some wind damage, but I don't see anything that won't be anything more than a little bit of a pain in the butt for harvesting. On those varieties that were planted in June. I have not seen any Stein hybrids that are showing super over 30 degree leaning in that. So we're doing good on that aspect. I was really impressed with a lot of the Stein varieties.
What about the heat that's going on? That's a big topic this week, heat.
Heat is another big topic for this week, and we are going through tasseling on a lot of our April planted corn, and I'd like to talk just a little bit about what stresses are happening to the corn plant right now as it's tasseling. I was in a couple different fields this morning that had just a little bit of brown silk showing, and one of the processes that I've learned is that you slowly remove the outer husk of the ear, and you tip the ear upside down, and then you see what silks are still attached. And typically the silks that are still attached are the ones that have not received pollen yet, and the kernels are immature or have not been pollinated yet. So when you're seeing a little bit of brown silk on that ear, that means that you're majority done of pollination. You may have just a little bit of the tip left, or you're somewhere around that range. This time frame for pollinating corn is as important as the August rains are for soybeans, because this heat can dry out silks, and once the silks dry out, they can't intake any pollen, and it can be detrimental towards corn that is tasseling at this time. There's a couple things that we have are positive in our direction. We have good subsoil moisture. We caught anywhere from 0.3 to 1.25 inches in our pretty decent little region here in southeast Iowa, west central Illinois, and that moisture I think is going to help the plant combat some of the heat stress we're going to see, with heat indices in the 110, 108 range for the next 3 days. So I think hopefully with the moisture that we had, we can combat a lot of the heat, don't you think, Turk?
Well, these nights that we're going to have at 80 degree nights, if it's still 80 degrees the first thing in the morning we start warming up again, that's going to be where we start having issues with pollen shed, I think. And so you get these high temperatures and you get high overnight temperatures. The plant doesn't get a chance to get rest at all. You got to have that temperature rise in order to get that pollen shed. And if we don't cool down enough, I'm worried that we won't get that temperature rise. I think you got to have something like a 30 degree temperature rise to get pollen to shed. Otherwise, it just is not going to do anything. And then, so we need to have this cool off. I think it's supposed to. I think it's supposed to be the first part of next week, isn't it, Joe?
Yes, our forecaster, which is available, on our website that you can sign up for, he's predicting that Monday we're going to go to below normal temperatures for about the next 2 weeks, at least the next projection. So we've got relief. We've got relief coming, but unfortunately, we've got this week is going to be really hard on the corn crop. But I kind of agree with Ben that we have a good subsoil moisture, and we did receive a little bit of rain in the area, so we should be able to squeak by. But we're definitely at a critical time for corn.
It was also a pretty short window too. That all the corn that got stuck in the ground in late April, so there's a pretty good chance that a lot of the stuff is already pollinated at least 70, 80, 90% at this point. So if we see anything, we might see a little bit of tip back on some of that stuff, because the fields that I was in today were at the very, very latest April planting before we got all that rain. So I'm hoping, got my fingers crossed, driving 60 mile an hour down the road, I can see a lot of stuff that has brown silks that is tasseling. So hopefully we just squeaked in before the pollination is really going to be hurt by this heat.
So what about Japanese beetles?
We are seeing reports in western Iowa. They're talking a lot about thistle caterpillars. I was reading an Iowa State article this morning, and Japanese beetles is what we're seeing more in eastern Iowa. My advice to farmers on that is you can get very simple, you can just Google this, defoliation percentages on soybeans. You can get a sheet that looks like this, and you take that sheet out to your soybean field, and the threshold for spraying for Japanese beetles and thistle caterpillars and things that defoliate your soybean field is 20%. And 20% is actually a lot more than what farmers actually think. So you have to have 20% defoliation on that leaf, on every leaf, and the economic threshold is very rarely met when we are dealing with beans this time of year and Japanese beetles.
The smaller beans might be a little easier to hit that threshold.
Yeah. You were talking with somebody this morning, weren't you?
Yeah.
About beans that were 4 or 5 inches tall.
Yeah, and were covered with Japanese beetles. Outside rows, hadn't got into the rest of the field yet, but I said keep an eye on them. Probably if he was going to spray some, it'd be just those outside rows. But they're still going to just keep coming. I mean, they're multiplying pretty rapidly right now. So.
Right. And a lot of the times that's just it's the outside 8 rows. It's where you see the majority of the damage. Once you get in the center of the field, it's not too bad. But you are correct. A smaller soybean plant has much foliage there. It's a lot quicker to get to 20%. So definitely keep an eye on stuff like that. The other thing that we're starting to get the phone calls on is fungicide on corn and soybeans. So I'm starting to see gray leaf spots show up in the bottom part of the canopy. Not very much is above the ear leaf. So what that tells me is that as long as we continue to have heavy dews in the mornings, light pop-up thunderstorm showers that we get, this time of year, a lot of the times, I mean, the amount of percent of gray leaf spot I'm seeing right now doesn't verify or doesn't justify a fungicide, but I've also made that recommendation to a grower before, and we just continue to get rain, and that gray leaf spot runs up the plant, and it ends up, a fungicide probably would have paid off at that point in time. Yeah. So we got some new products that have 3 modes of action. They're showing a little bit of health effects on the corn. Some of the more progressive guys that are willing to spend money on a crop and want to have as many bushels as possible, and they're comfortable with a fungicide, I'm suggesting that in the next 7 days here, once we make sure we get past the right pollination time frame, because some of the adjuvants can burn, pollen and silks and whatnot. I'm suggesting, if you have gray leaf spot and it's getting close to the ear leaf, go ahead and go get stuff sprayed.
So the conversation that I've been having, they've been calling and said, do I use a fungicide or don't I use a fungicide? So I don't want to spend money on this crop if I'm just going to create yield for the insurance company. And that's the question that everybody's thinking about right now. Do I spend extra money or don't I? And you have to evaluate where are you at on the crop. Are you going to be, everybody knows where their yields are. They know where that number is, that magic number where they're not going to get a crop insurance payment, and yet they're going to continue to grow on those fields. And it depends on what kind of insurance you have. Do you have an enterprise system, or do you have individual fields insured or farms insured? So everybody's situation is a little bit different again, but I think if you're considering doing it, and you have some brown silks out there, you can go out there and do some counts right now and kind of get some yield estimates, can't you, Ben?
Yep, I'm seeing on the earlier planted stuff, I'm seeing 16 around as an average, and 40 to 50 potential kernels.
And
And
pretty
like-
high populations, right?
And in very high populations. I mean, some of these Steinfields that I'm walking in are 38,000. And it's bing, bang, boom. The ears are touching and stuff looks good. I think the best way, and insurance is one portion of that, but I think the best way is if you can get up above, whether you're climbing your grain leg or you're climbing a bin or you're driving your sprayer.
Or get
and
your
you
drone up.
Or get your drone. That's probably the best way to do it, is figure out where your holes and pockets are. Because if you can figure out about what percentage, because the earlier planted corn is going to have holes in it. That's its downfall.
I don't think there's a field out there that doesn't have a hole in it, is there?
Probably not. But if you can figure out your percentage on how many acres you think you have holes in it and how far that's going to lower your total yield goal for that field, that's going to be your deciding factor on whether the insurance payment, you're going to get an insurance payment, or you're going to actually market the best crop that you possibly can market.
So your best fields are the ones you should scout first for fungicide application.
Absolutely.
And that would hold true for soybeans too.
Absolutely.
And what, R3 on soybeans is when you got to be ready to roll?
Yep. As soon as you start seeing pods on the main stem at the top third of the plant that are, an eighth to a quarter inch long, once we start seeing the pod development, that's the best time to get in there and start spraying. And with the price of insecticide, usually I would throw an insecticide in just to get a fungicide, insecticide at that point. Clean up what you got and keep your fingers crossed that it holds.
Okay. Anything else?
I was going to mention just a little bit about the markets. Obviously, they're bouncing around still. We still waiting to find out what the final numbers are. I think everybody has their assumptions, and everybody's got a little bit different number. But USDA just USDA just keeps keeping us hanging as far as what these prevented planting acres are and what the yields are going to be. I still think that there's probably more than we think on prevented planting out there, but that's my opinion. Right now, I think what's hurting the market as much as anything is there's a lot of corn in the bin, and everybody's realizing that it's going to have to go someplace. It's either going to have to come out of the field and go someplace, or this crop's going to have to start getting moved. In order to get it moved, rivers are just now opening up. I mean, I'm hearing huge long lines of people trying to deliver soybeans on their river open stuff. As the barges are coming in, fertilizer's trying to be unloaded off barges so they can turn around and load those same barges with soybeans. So it's a mess at all the grain terminals right now up and down the rivers. So and it's going to continue to be for a while. And the trade knows that there's a lot of this stuff is in farmers' hands and has to move. So eventually, when the big corps get control of this grain, then I think that's when we'll see things.
So who's going to blink first, the farmer or the grain companies?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Have you heard any recent numbers on preventative plant? I read an article this morning that they were up to about 12 million acres, like 8 on corn and 4 million on beans is what they're talking for preventative plant. That's huge numbers.
They're talking. They're talking about leaking some new numbers, new information to us even before the August report comes out. So, it's. I think sometimes somebody at EPA or USDA is playing the board of trade or influencing it somehow. I really don't know.
Be careful, you might get investigated.
I hear you. I'm just saying that it just seems like there is no rhyme or reason to their madness when it comes to these releasing information on government reports.
Well, I think one of the things they found is not to overreact and come slowly and steady, as opposed to putting numbers out that they have to retreat from, and for some reason the farmers always tend to produce that crop at an incredible level, despite no matter how many obstacles are thrown at them, they seem to always come through with a crop. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a different ball game this year than what we've seen in the past, and we got a long way to go before this crop's in the bin.
I'm thinking that we're probably going to see some WikiLeaks come out about government reports.
It could be. Might be a 2-year investigation on that.
There you go.
Well, anyhow, I know Turk and Ben are really focused on what's going on right now with the crop and trying to help our customers get through that and get the right recommendations and get every bushel that we possibly can get for them, and that's what we're here for. I'm focused on 2020 and trying to get ready for that next crop and set it to a new high standard of yield and weed control. And we will have our pricing out first week of August, and our dealers will be ready to start talking to you about the incredible new options that we have for 2020. So I know that you're focused on just surviving today, but soon we'll have to start planning. And we've always found that farmers who plan make more money. And we're going to be out as early as we possibly can to start helping you plan for 2020. So thanks for watching today. We sincerely appreciate your business, and we'll see you next week.